With us this morning, retired Army General Stanley McChrystal. He is a former commander of American and NATO troops in Afghanistan. He also led special operations forces in Iraq. His memoir, My Share of the Task, is now in paperback, and we're pleased to have General McChrystal here. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie.
Let me begin with Ukraine, because we're all focused on it, and the world's attention is focused on it. What's your assessment?
Well, we can look at what's happening today, but if we step back, I really think it's got a lot of the same looks of the collapse of the former Soviet Union or the Arab Spring. You start to see a popular movement, and at first the government tends to resist it and say that we won't change. And then there tends to hit a tipping point, and it looks as though President Yanukovych may be being isolated right now. So I think things are in play, and if we look at a big sense, that would be what matters.
So what do we do, and what does Europe do?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. This is different from something like Egypt because you have Russia and President Putin with clearly hard opinions on this, and the European Union as same. I think we need to navigate this one carefully, but I don't think that we should necessarily not support the movement. I think that we should be firm in our values and communicating those.
The pictures are so disturbing when you look at them. When you look at the pictures and people are thinking, what is going on there? Could you just briefly explain why it's important, why we should care about this?
Well, I'm going to give you two answers, Gail. We should care because it's a movement trying to move a country in a different direction. And I think the direction that they're trying to move is positive. On the other hand, if we focus all the close-ups on the people who have been killed, 70-some people killed this week, I believe, but that dwarfs the number killed, or that's dwarfed by the number killed in Syria, for example. So sometimes we can look so closely at violence that it looks bigger than it is, and we can overreact to things.
And also because this is a power play by Russia in some ways, too, there. But can I turn to the issue of Afghanistan, which you know about so well? I think many Americans may have forgotten that we still have 30,000 troops in Afghanistan, and the current president there has refused to sign a U.S. security agreement with us. What do you make of Karzai's blatant defiance and the fact that he's freed more than 60 prisoners?
I think what we're seeing in Afghanistan is domestic politics, Afghanistan's domestic politics. And if you put a lens of that, President Karzai is in the last part of an extended term as president. He becomes a lame duck the day that security agreement is signed. My gut feeling is that he is trying to maintain handles on this as long as possible. I think once the election's gone, his successor, almost anyone, will move rapidly to sign that security agreement.
Well, I guess here's what interests me is that Vice President Biden has called for almost a total withdrawal. There's talk amongst Defense Secretary Hagel to leave maybe 9,000 troops there. Are you concerned that Afghanistan will turn into an Iraq, essentially, if we totally pull out troops?
Nor I am. I'm biased about Afghanistan, and I admit that up front. I think that what Afghanistan needs is a demonstration of commitment and partnership and friendship. That doesn't mean many, many thousands of troops, but I think it means some presence that reassures them that unlike 1989, when essentially we walked away, we would not do that, and we would be there to help them develop.
Is it what's happened in Iraq since American troops left a forecast of what would happen in Afghanistan?
I think it should be a warning. No two situations are exactly the same, but I think we should take a clear lesson from what has happened in Iraq, which is disturbing.
And so what happens to Afghanistan if American troops do leave and there's no agreement? What will become of Afghanistan? And will it become a haven for terrorism?
I think there's every possibility that would occur. I don't think that the Taliban are strong enough to sweep in and take over a unified Afghanistan. I think it's more likely that it would break into areas of conflict. I think the Afghan government would certainly be able to maintain control over much of the country for quite a while. But the wild card would be, what would Pakistan do? What would Iran's role be? And then whether the leadership in Afghanistan can strike a course that can start to bring in, particularly the Pashtun South, into the government.
You know, the latest public poll for the first time shows that Americans in this country now think it was a mistake to get involved militarily. How much does public opinion factor into these conflicts, and what do you think about that?
I think public opinion is almost, as Clausewitz would say, your center of gravity, because it determines whether you can do something and how long you can do it. I think we need to think about that. When I used to talk to General Kiani and the Chief of Staff of the Pakistani Army, he used to talk about every operation he wanted to do. He had to decide whether he had enough public support to do the next step. I think we could do a better job of marshaling our public opinion, explaining to people why we are in Afghanistan, why it matters, because it's very hard to ask American families to let their sons, daughters, fathers, and mothers go for many years unless we reinforce the importance of it.
This book is your memoir now in paperback. In this really remarkable life that you have led from West Point to the battlefield and what you have done in leading men and women in combat, what's the most important lesson that you have learned?
Well, I think it's about leading. I think it is that leading is not about the individual. It is about creating a team that does things. I've never seen anything in my life go well that I did alone. And every time I got to be a part of a team, and when I contributed to making the team better, that's why I teach leadership at Yale now. That's why the firm that I co-founded is focused on leadership, because I think that's the ingredient, the building of teams, that changes everything.
Is there a one-word answer to how you're enjoying retirement from the military?
Well, I spend a lot of time with Annie, and so Annie would be the word.
Annie would say
Your
everything
wife.
worked out.
Yes,
Exactly.
okay.
General Stanley McChrystal, great to have you here.
Thank you very much.